right, welcome back to On Texas Football, special live edition of On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe. He's CJ Vogel. Blake Gideon coming back to the 40 acres. Only a one-year absence, left to be the defensive coordinator at Georgia Tech. He is now coming back to be the safeties coach at Texas under Will Muschamp. CJ, we don't know this officially, but probably some type of co-defensive coordinator, pass game coordinator. Blake Gideon will have some title attached to his name, but a guy who played a pretty big role in Texas having one of the best pass defenses in the country, coming back to Texas at a time where Sark's trying to get that pass defense fixed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a great re-addition to the Texas staff. Of course, getting Gideon back at the University of Texas is key. Of course, he's very familiar with Will Muschamp. Not only did he play for him as a Longhorn back in 2008 to 2010, but he then went to Florida, followed him to Florida as a quality control assistant, bounced around, and now after 3 years at Texas from 21 to 24, Jeff, he became the defensive coordinator at Georgia Tech and now returns to Austin to a defense that I would assume he's very familiar with. And that on the back end, I'm sure, as we'll talk about it, is very exciting for us.
Yeah, no doubt. Like you said, not only did he play for Will Muschamp, you got to remember, like Will Muschamp took a gamble on Blake Gideon as a player. Yeah. Blake was an early enrollee in that spring of 2008. And Muschamp decided, hey, my starting safety tandem is going to be Blake Gideon as a true freshman and Earl Thomas as a redshirt freshman. And by the next season, they might have been the best safety tandem in the country. And then Blake, once his NFL stint was done, like you said, he broke into coaching with Will Muschamp. That was his first coaching job, was being a defensive quality control guy at Florida, then was a graduate assistant under him at Auburn. CJ, this comes at a time, we had news earlier today that you had reported over at OnTexasFootball.com, and we talked about it here on the channel. Kenodo Hudson, no longer the Nichols coach. Sounds right now like Mark Orfe is going to stay. Sark hinted at that in the press conference when he pointed out that Mark Orfe was a GA for Will Muschamp at South Carolina. But CJ, there's no question about it. We've gotten all kinds of questions. What does this mean for Johnny Nansen? Where's Will Muschamp going to work? CJ, it became pretty clear the further removed we get from the coordinator change, Sark is not happy with where the pass defense is, and he wants it fixed.
Yeah, he does. And going back to Gideon's first 3 years at Texas, that pass defense started out pretty bad, right, Jeff? We remember where things were, and they quickly ascended, right? Obviously, you sit there in 2023 and you get to the college football playoff, and you look at your defense and you say, okay, well, what's the one thing that you're missing? And it's pressure on the quarterback. You get that remedied. It helps the defense and the secondary, specifically in the back end. And then in 24, his last year at Texas before taking the Georgia Tech job, Texas's secondary was fantastic, right? Makuba, you get a Thorpe Award winner back there. Jelani McDonald's emergence. You have Michael Taft playing at an All-American level. But more than anything, to me, it's familiarity with the scheme and the approach, the style of play that they want to play with Muschamp. But this is, to me, Jeff, this is Sark saying, hey, Coach Muschamp, here are the keys. This is your room. Figure it out. Make it look pretty. Again, he called him the head coach of the defense in the not introductory press conference, but the first press conference that we had with Sark after the Muschamp news, saying, that's the guy I want to be to head coach my entire defense. I just want to let him go all about doing it to his side of the field so I can focus more on being a head coach, focus more on being a play caller. Now we're seeing exactly some of those dominoes that were meant to fall originally with that hire.
That's where I am with the Johnny Nansen decision. Now, we don't know what the future holds right now for Johnny Nansen. I would suspect, CJ, he's going to have some opportunities if he wants them to go back to being a play calling defensive coordinator like he was at Arizona. But look, if Will Muschamp determines that Johnny Nansen's a good fit for the staff, then I'm all for it. If he determines that he needs a different linebackers coach, I'm all for it. But you look at Will Muschamp, he's coached all over the defense. As you said, he's basically going to be the head coach of the defense running this thing. Having Blake Gideon coming back to coach safeties, Mark Orfe will be coaching the corners. We know Kenodo Hudson's out as Nichols coach. We'll see if Texas does hire a Nichols coach or what happens with that role. But CJ, you got tying the front end with the back end. The best year it was tied together under PK was in 2024. And you've got to wonder, okay, how much of that was just at that point that Blake Gideon and Terry Joseph were finally on the same page with PK? How much of it was man, you hit a home run, a grand slam in the portal with Andrew Makuba, and Jahdae Barron was healthy and ended up winning the Jim Thorpe Award and was a first-round draft pick. So I think the production or lack thereof on the back end this year would probably tell you it's more of the latter than the former. But at the end of the day, look, the pass defense, it was unacceptable where it was. And I want to get your thoughts on this too, because as I'm watching the college football playoff, and what I'm going to say is, no, it's not like I just had this grand revelation watching these games. But when I watch some of these playoff teams, I watch Oregon and I watch even Texas Tech or Miami or Georgia and Ole Miss. The defenses now that are going far in the college football playoffs, CJ, they're aggressive defenses. Like, yeah, they've got guys up front that can get after the quarterback, but they're not just relying on organic pressure. They're dialing it up. They're bringing different packages. They're playing games up front. I think that's really what Sark wants, because you can be more aggressive in coverage behind that. I just think he wants a defense that's going to be more on the attack than back on its heels.
And look, you got those guys to do exactly that, right? Jelani McDonald coming back, that makes a lot of sense for him specifically. A guy who's probably would have been a late day 2, early day 3 draft pick this year, Jeff. We know that Jelani McDonald, next year is going to be a guy that takes another step forward with a Blake Gideon here. But then you start looking around to the other pieces in that safety room, and how can you not be excited to see a Jonah Williams or a Zealous Hicks in that room? We've already talked about, or I guess we haven't talked about it. We need to talk about it. Derrick Williams made the decision to enter the transfer portal, or at least announced his decision to enter the portal. Texas is still in communication with him in hopes to bring him back to Austin. Well, Blake Gideon was the one that went down into Louisiana and pulled him out of the boot. At the time, you don't pull highly talented defensive backs out of the state of Louisiana. Those guys, 99 times out of 100, Jeff, they end up going to LSU. And that was a big win for Texas at the time. We know that Texas likes Derrick Williams, so no, he's not yet announced anything. But we are monitoring his decision and whether or not he will officially end up in the transfer portal or return to Texas. Hopefully, the return of Blake Gideon helps sweeten that decision just a little bit.
Yeah, that's another good thing is like, okay, well, how is the new hire going to jibe with the guys in that room? Well, he was big in the Jonah Williams recruitment. He helped recruit Zealous Hicks. Even though he's a corner, he was really big in the Cade Phillips recruitment. So Blake knows all these guys. So it's not like there's some chasm that has to be overcome with a lack of familiarity. Like everybody knows everybody. So it should be a pretty good fit. We got a super chat. Super chats jump to the front of the line anytime we're here live on the On Texas Football YouTube channel. Kelly Hill 6910. Thank you for the super chat. Says, can I talk some trash? Will Muschamp needs to learn how to throw a punch. Heaven forbid he breaks his wrist on a whiteboard. CJ, I will go out on a limb and say I do not want to firsthand find out how good of a punch Will Muschamp does or doesn't have. I do know that he's broken his share of dry erase boards in a locker room setting on a sideline that I think he can get it done regardless.
Yeah, I think you're right, but that's actually taking a little detour here. Kelly, thank you very much for the super chat. You talk about the intensity and kind of the just overall intent of practices under Will Muschamp, how fiery he can be. Blake Gideon had a little bit of that. He's not as, what would you call it? Up front maybe, but he's very intentional with the way that he directs kids. And I think that is something that, you can pitch to kids coming out of the portal, coming out of the high school ranks. If you come to the University of Texas, your technique is going to be at the top of the line. Your fundamentals will be at the top of the line, and your overall assignment will be instilled very quickly from day one. Those are two guys that are very direct with their coaching, very hands-on with their coaching, and overall I think is something that is very positive for young defensive backs or just defensive players in general when it comes to beginning their college careers.
Yeah, I think this is worth mentioning. And I know Sark takes some flack, but man, if you've ever been out to a practice and just watch Sark operate, I wouldn't say there's anything soft or passive or anything like that about the way a Steve Sarkisian practice runs. Now there are guys there, especially that initial staff and the staff that was with him through that semifinal year in 24 before Bo Davis and then Terry Joseph and Blake departed. There was some give and take where I think PK was really he wasn't as intense, but when you got a staff with Bo Davis and Blake Gideon and all the other Jeff Choate, you didn't really need to be that guy. I think, this is going to be a younger staff. I mean, think about it. I don't have the ages of all these guys off the top of my head, CJ, but you think about Kenny Baker, Blake Gideon, Mark Orfe, Alan Clark. We'll see whether Johnny Nansen sticks or not. Let's just take him out of the equation. Those other guys I mentioned, it's a really young staff. I think you need someone who is deliberate and goes about it with intent. Muschamp is going to bring that, and I think the fact that Blake, for lack of a better term, speaks Muschamp, I think that's going to help the rest of the staff kind of fall in line because those guys probably trust him.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and that's a great point, Jeff. You have guys in that room that are already familiar with Blake Gideon. On top of that, you have a coach in the secondary that's already familiar with a new system or a system that's going to be foreign to an entirety of a defense. And we've talked about it previously with Pete Kwiatkowski. He wanted his front seven, and then he wanted to kind of conjoin that together with the secondary, whereas it was kind of you're putting two pieces together to make one. I believe, and this is, before we see it on the field at Texas, a Will Muschamp defense will be one cohesive unit rather than just bits and pieces that you're stitching together. So ultimately, I think that's great for the continuity of, hey, there's already pre-existing relationships in that room between player and coach, and now there's pre-existing relationships between position coach and defensive coordinator to help seamlessly transition that into what we'll see eventually with the 26 defense.
I want to get to this question right here, CJ, just in reference to Derrick Williams. And again, we don't know what Derrick Williams' decision is going to be, but Rev DJ VD1 says, was Derrick Williams fully recovered from the knee injury? No, I don't think he was. And CJ, you can see that, like, and look, it was an ACL tear, but you got to remember the Oklahoma game was second week of October last year. So when he's back on the field early in the season, he's less than a year removed from the injury, let alone the surgery, then the rehab. So yeah, he wasn't at full strength. And I think that's why you saw him maybe take a little bit to get back. But look, we're talking a lot of hypotheticals here, but if he is back and if he is fully recovered, man, he's a difference maker at safety.
Yeah, no, again, as a true freshman, he was probably your best cover safety going into that back half of 2023 and into the college football playoff. But looking real quick at this Texas safety room at the moment, and Jeff, I think that we are expecting some interest, at least at safety, or definitely at defensive back in the portal for Texas. Excuse me. But we're returning Jelani McDonald. Xavier Filsaime is set to return. Jonah Williams, Zealous Hicks. You're very thin after that, right? We saw Jordan Johnson-Rubel get on the field, but he got on the field at linebacker, right? So if you return Derrick Williams, again, there's a guy that's familiar with the position coach. There's a guy who's played a lot of football, a lot of meaningful football in his career. Oh, and that's going to be an additional 9 months after an ACL tear, where, to your point, I don't know if he had that same get up originally last year when he returned to the field than what we saw as a true freshman. Hopefully, should he return after another, strength and conditioning season, he should be back to full speed.
The other thing too that I think is worth mentioning here, Jerry's talked a lot about this. Muschamp has preferred a big nickel. So if Williams is back, in theory, you could have times where you've got Derrick Williams at safety with Filsaime or whoever, Jonah Williams, Zealous Hicks, whoever your other safety is. Now you could have Jelani McDonald in the nickel. Or you could have Derrick Williams in the nickel at times if you wanted. Or we know Grayson Littleton's got some time there. You can kind of moneyball that nickel because, CJ, at this point, I don't know if you get Derrick Williams back. I think safety, nickel, corner, whatever you're going to recruit in the portal, I think it becomes less of a priority. It falls into more of that. It's drifting more into luxury territory than definitely a necessity or even a want. But again, we'll see what happens with Derrick Williams. But again, if you're just joining us, Blake Gideon coming back to Texas as the safeties coach under Will Muschamp. Don't know exactly what his title will be in terms of co-defensive coordinator, defensive pass game coordinator. We don't know anything along those lines. So your defensive coaching staff right now, CJ reported earlier today, and we talked about here on the channel, Kenoto Hudson, the Nichols coach, is out. So you've got, as of right now, Johnny Nansen at linebackers, Kenny Baker and Alan Clark up front, Blake Gideon and Mark Orfe in the secondary, and Will Muschamp. CJ, I think it's important to remember that Sark said Will Muschamp will start out working with the secondary, but that's not necessarily where he's going to end or what it's going to look like in terms of his area of focus in 2026. I think that's subject to change at this point.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I do think there's still staff movement, still some staff shakeup remaining here. Of course, we talked about it. Kenodo Hudson no longer with the staff, are not expected to return for 2026. On top of that, a number of analysts and special assistants will not return on the defensive side of the ball as well. You mentioned Johnny Nansen earlier. Right now, I lean that he won't return. But we'll see, of course, because look, if you're Will Muschamp, what have you done really well in your life? It's coach linebackers and really get it situated in the middle of the field. But of course, we'll have all of that covered over at On Texas Football, Jeff. And I believe we have a special code that you can, or a special situation right now where you can join On Texas Football in the community over there for just $1 for the first month.
Yes.
How about that? What a deal. Welcome to 2026, fellas.
Yeah, I've got our Portal Madness event going on. Look, there's so much going on, and we can't cover it all here on the channel. So, yeah, myself, CJ, Bobby, Jerry, everybody's dropping tidbits that they've got over at ontexasfootball.com. You can sign up right now, get your first month for $1. CJ, you can't get anything for $1 anymore. So we're stretching the value of that dollar for you over at ontexasfootball.com. This is for new subscribers. So if you're a returning subscriber, sorry, unfortunately it doesn't apply. But hey, if you know somebody that they've been wanting to give ontexasfootball.com a try, or maybe you know that they watch the channel. CJ, I've noticed that I've had a lot of our new subscribers say, hey, I've watched the channel forever. Either didn't know about the website or didn't think about the website. They're jumping on board and they're loving it. The community over at ontexasfootball.com is growing. So make sure you get over there and check it out. Again, take advantage of our Portal Madness special over at ontexasfootball.com. Your first month for $1. CJ, anything as far as visitors, anything we need to touch? I know we talked a lot about it here on the channel today, but I guess we'll get the evening crowd caught up on everything that's going on the first day of the portal.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of the portal visitors for this weekend are getting in tonight. Probably as we speak currently, they will be on campus tomorrow. Of course, Cam Coleman, the number one player in the portal, he is one of those guys that we are expecting on campus. Our Bobby Burton did a fantastic job breaking that news earlier today. Also on the lookout for Jaden Woods, the edge rusher from Florida, Arkansas defensive lineman Ian Drafard as well. And of course, right now, Louisville running back Isaac Brown is one of those guys that we believe is trending in the right direction for Texas. We still believe there's additional movement still to come as well in terms of who Texas could be, pursuing or awaiting decisions from. Jaden Ball being one of those as well. But Jeff, real quick before we get out of here, we have another super chat from Spence GPT2. If Gideon is coming back, is there still a chance that we could still T-Rod? That's Travaris Robinson from Georgia. Look, Will Muschamp was basically one of those key defensive coordinators, one of those key guys in the room for Kirby Smart at Georgia over the last few years. That means Travaris Robinson, given that absence now, is in a position to ascend up the ranks, and we'll see. Because look, not everybody's willing to take a defensive coordinator title and bump back down to a position room. Obviously, that's what happened here with Blake Gideon, but it's a tall ask, is how I'll leave it.
Yeah, especially at this point. I mean, look, and I totally get the question, Spence. It's a valid question because if you look at T-Rob's resume, pretty much wherever Will Muschamp has gone since he left Texas, Travaris Robinson has followed him. He was with him at Florida, was with him at Auburn, and then was with them also at South Carolina. So at this point, I just don't know, again, if that's a realistic option. Got a couple more supers let's get to before we get out of here. Texas on My Mind says, why do we want DW back? Wasn't good this year. Talking about Derrick Williams. Again, look, it's a hypothetical. We don't know how it's going to end. He said he was going to enter the portal. His name has not appeared in the portal as far as we know. Wasn't good this year. Again, CJ, I just go back to, man, the knee injury. I mean, who knows what he'll look like with a little more rehab, a little more time off. To me, the upside of getting the Derrick Williams you got pre-knee injury is worth him coming back and seeing what you got.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's another guy that's very familiar with that room that can help. And at least I was going to write about this a little bit earlier, but hey, the portal takes over, all precedent and then some coaching changes. But, Derrick Williams, again, a guy coming from the out of state, if he returns for a third year at Texas, this is a guy that would emerge as a leader in that secondary. And, you lose a lot of vocal pieces going into 2026. Any and all leaders, any and all voices that have been in the system that can help continue the culture or maintain it at a level that we've become accustomed to over the last 3 years, I'm all for it. And I think Derrick Williams would be a benefit both on and off the field in 26.
Absolutely. Sugar Papi Chulo, thank you for the super chat. Says, is it intimidating to ask Champ hard questions? CJ, Will Muschamp's last season at Texas was 2010. Where were you at in life in 2010?
I was just beginning high school.
Okay. I actually was, that was one of my first few years on the beat. Will Muschamp's last year. The 2010 was the year I started going to press conferences. It's not hard to ask Will Muschamp questions. It's not intimidating. And you know what? Here's the thing, though. Sark doesn't make his coordinators available. So we'll maybe once or twice a year, we'll get to talk to Will Muschamp in that setting. But man, if you ask Will Muschamp an X's and O's football question, he will answer it. And the thing I love about him, he's not going to dumb it down. He will talk to you like he's at a clinic drawing it up on the whiteboard. Some folks in the media don't like that. I love it because the more football I can consume, the better off. Yeah, CJ is making a lot of people feel. I was watching Texas State and Rice today in the Armed Forces Bowl. Patrick Creighton Jr. was quarterbacking for Rice today. Yeah. So as a long-suffering fan of the Dallas Football Cowboys, that did not make me feel any younger.
Yeah, we saw Julius Jones Jr. at the Under Armour practice in Orlando. That made me feel pretty old, Jeff.
Yeah. When guys that played with the Cowboys with Tashard Choice, when they are having kids that are college age now, it kind of puts it into perspective. Michael Williams, RT9VG, thank you for the super chat. Is the football clock ticking on Jonah deciding to play one sport? CJ, I would say right now, as we sit here on January 2nd, I would say no, but I do think at some point, maybe this summer after baseball season, he's going to have to decide because he is draft eligible in baseball after the 2027 season. So I don't know if the clock is ticking yet, but I think it's going to happen at some point where he'll have to go down one road or there. Maybe he could be Chad Jones and do both. I don't know, but history tells you no.
Yeah, history tells you no, but on top of that, look, new defensive scheme coming in. If you want to be on the football field in 2026, you need to be around the spring. If you're Jonah Williams, to get acclimated to, the calls, the system, everything that goes in between, but also to earn the trust of Will Muschamp, because yes, Blake Gideon returns. That's probably a benefit for Jonah Williams. I remember he posted an Instagram story after he departed for Georgia Tech saying, man, this hurts, right? Well, now that he's back, you finally get to share that room with them. But on top of that, you're also sharing your attention with another sport. So he needs to get back over to football and at least show a lot of face in the facility this spring to get on the field in the fall.
No doubt. Yeah, he'll be in meetings and everything. Obviously, Schlossen's going to go let him pad up for a practice and go through a spring scrimmage on the weekend when they've got an SEC series or whatever. But, yeah, it is going to be an interesting time for Jonah Williams. All right, just last time to recap, Blake Gideon, gone for 1 year, went to be the defensive coordinator at Georgia Tech. He is coming back to Texas as the safeties coach to be determined exactly what the full title will be. It's expected to be some type of co-defensive coordinator, defensive pass game coordinator, something along those lines. But it is Blake Gideon returning to Texas. We will keep you updated on all the breaking news here on the On Texas Football YouTube channel, as well as on TexasFootball.com. And don't forget, we've got our Portal Madness special going on right now over at OnTexasFootball.com. Your first month on the site for just $1. There's so many news, notes, and nuggets going on over at OnTexasFootball.com. I'm trying to see what the Portal After Dark thread that Jerry started last night. We're over 1,000 replies and over 42,000 views on that thread alone. So a busy day on the message board. Come over and hang out. Love that the community is growing, and come hang out and talk ball with us over at OnTexasFootball.com. Make sure you stay locked in over on the site and here on the On Texas Football YouTube channel. Make sure that you're subscribed. Go ahead and like this video. That way, anytime we've got a live stream that drops, you'll be the first to know and you won't miss any of our Texas coverage. All right, CJ, thanks for the knowledge and the expertise as always. Matthew, behind the scenes, thank you so much. Oh, dude, you got the Cheez-It Bowl commemorative box. Man, I tried to get one of those on the website and they were already sold out. So props to CJ for getting his commemorative Cheez-Its box.
I was carrying this through the airport like a baby.
You still got your hat? You still got the Cheez-It hat, by the way?
Yeah, but that comes with the price.
Yeah, you gotta have a big super chat to get the CJ Cheese hat. So just keep that in mind. All right, CJ, again, thanks for the knowledge and expertise. Matthew, thank you behind the scenes. We'll be back again. Anytime there's breaking news, we'll get it to you. We've got plenty of transfer portal content here on the channel and over on the site. For CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, hook 'em.
Happy Friday, Matthew.